Triveni, good evening, and thank you so much for accepting the invitation for being a part of this 100 interview series on the life and legacy of Metropolitan Dr. Paulos Ma Gregorius. And we are so happy to have today His Grace Dr. Yakoob Mar Irenaios with us. Triveni is a renowned scholar and also one who has been with Ma Gregorius. Tirmeni, so with your permission, can we begin the interview, Tirmeni?
Sure.
Sure. Tirmeni, when did you actually meet Ma Gregorius for the first time, and how was the interaction or the experience with that interaction?
Good evening, HN. I
Good
cannot
evening, Tirmeni.
specify a date for a day when I actually got met by saw Gregorius. Uh, I think I saw him first as an action, Paul Verghese action. He used to come for the NGO CSM annual meetings and some other general meetings. And I was one among the listeners, keenly listening to what he said. And what attracted me about Paulus Gregorius was his felicity, not just in using language, but in explaining very hard theological or philosophical facts, very, very simple language, which almost anybody can comprehend without much difficulty. So I cannot claim to have any personal connection with him early in life because I was never one of his students in the seminary. But I revere him, I respect him from maybe from a distance or from my listening to his speeches or reading his books. Maybe this is my first introduction to the big man called Paulos Gregorius. His books, I have read many of them, and some of them more than once, because the content so much attracted me uh, by the lucidity of his thinking and his rare analytical skills in explaining a very, very hard philosophical tenet or a theological point. He diverges from the traditional way, but he has his own way of explaining a philosophical truth or a theological enigma. He has his own way. I don't think he was imitating anyone as a teacher or an explainer or a philosopher. He had very renowned teachers in India and abroad, and he was an alumnus of Princeton, where I did my master's in theology, and I saw his name there among the distinguished students of Princeton. List is there. I saw Paul Verghese there. So I'm very proud of looking at that. I just told my seminary president, who is supposed to be the principal, that this is our man. And the then president, when I was a student there, he was as a student with Paul Verghese section at Princeton Seminary, which is one of the frontline universities in the US. As you know, two or three universities in the US are very much world renowned universities: Harvard, Leeds, and Princeton. Even today, it is like that. Then I know him as a priest just before he became a bishop. And he was consecrated along with four others at Niranam St. Mary's Church on the 15th of February 1975. You'll be wondering how I know exactly the date. Because I was ordained a priest on the 8th February 1975, and the consecration was held just after a week on 15th of February. And before the consecration, all the candidates came to Mount Tabor there. And Macarius Triveni, Achan, all our Achans there. And they were there and they went to some other place. And later on, I met him as a Ramban. And also, because I attended his consecration, I was in the Madbaha, Veranam Church. It was a big crowd. And Vadakundal Baba was leading it. Taugen Baba was present. He was pretty old. And after that, uh, as I said, I do not have very personal kind of relationship or something reminiscence recall, but from far and near, from a distance, I really appreciate him, his originality of thinking, and his unique way of presenting things. I can just recall a small incident where he was with the students. I think it's school students or college students. He was just asking them because he was very happy to be with children, as you know. And he was very jovial talking, and he was explaining to them some of the terms which we think is very familiar to us. The term environment, that somehow it came there. And he asked, do you know what is his environment? Can you define? The children said this and that, he won't agree. And finally he said, look, we are here sitting in a room. Everything in you are sitting in a room all alone. Everything in the room except you is your environment. So simple. I taught psychology in college along with English, and I was wondering how can this big man put such things into very simple language? Anybody can understand it. The environment and like personality are seemingly enigmatic terms in psychology, but he could explain these terms in very simple terms. And as a bishop, I know him through his speeches. I have visited Delhi, Aramana. He was there, and he had some health problems when he was on a flight. He was admitted in the hospital and came back to New York. And he was having a cane in his hand. He was limping, and he won't allow anybody to help him or support him. No, don't drive me, he would say. So I was there in New York at that time, and before he left for India, we gave him a good send off, a very warm kind of send off. And I was also there to say a few words of felicitation to Dr. Paulos Margarios. I said, uh, my wishes. I wish the best for the evergreen Acharya. That is what I said then. I still remember my voice. My best for my evergreen Acharya. He had got the Acharya award then. So I remembered that. And before I went to Princeton as a student, I thought Matthews too, Baba told me, get a testimonial from Gregorius Tirumeni, but this many was not available. So I went with five testimonials from some of the other people, even with my guide, Dr. Sukumar and Nair. He got a very beautiful testimonial from me. So I got admission and scholarship. When I came back, Lava said, go and meet Paulus from the university. So when I saw him in Theological, he said, oh, good. It's very good to have an exposition. Still remember, you should come to the seminary and stay with me. The seminary for long. Nothing happened. I went to Malabar and Tirumeni went somewhere else. So these are my early experiences. As I said, I cannot claim to have any very personal reminiscences because, as I said, I was never a student of Paulorgi Second of Paulus Gregorius Tirumeni, but I know him as a teacher, as a philosopher, as a theologian par excellence. These are my early memories.
Thank you so much, Sirveni. Sirveni, you consider Mark Gregorius as one of the teachers who have inspired you and motivated you in your thinking and also in your further understandings. So kindly share your thoughts regarding the same.
I am very proud and convinced to say that he was a philosopher, theologian, or theologian, philosopher, both are right. And he knew very well the nuances of philosophy, especially Western philosophy. And from the West, he moved to the East. And he was not satisfied with the Western philosophy. He will go to the roots of Western philosophy, Plato, or even earlier than that. And he would explain and challenge some of the philosophical principles there. And his attention moved to the East, especially the Indian early philosophers and philosophy. And it seemed later in life he was much attracted towards Indian philosophy and Indian philosophers. Look east, that is the policy now of the central government. And Paulos Gregorius implemented this years before. Look east. So, as a philosopher, uh, when he talks, the philosopher comes out. As I said, he was a number one teacher, a teacher who can explain things in his own unique way. I have seen only very few good gurus, India and abroad, in my knowledge. In India, we had one Dr. Rajiv Tarnath, who passed away last year. He was 90. He taught us T.S. Eliot, Wasteland. He was with us for 1.5 years, and he is one of the best teachers or the best teacher I ever had in India, in Kerala or outside Kerala where I studied. And in Princeton, we had another professor of theology, philosophy. He was a philosopher, Dr. Diogenes Allen. These are two icons which I still have in mind, Dr. Tarnath and Dr. Allen. And the third one is Paulus Marcus. And all the three are philosophers. Rajiv Tarnath was a musician. He was a first-rate literator. He was a student of T.S. Eliot. So he will mix our classes with music, poetry, and when the fisherman's language or song, he just starts singing in the class. We are only 15 in the MA English class. I was a deacon then. He comes, he asks every question, you deacon. So I am the target. And he liked me very much. And in Princeton too, Dr. Allen, he was the best professor we had. In all Princeton's renowned staff, he's the only one I have very much respect. He passed away. And the third I have in mind is Paulus Marcus. He will not drag on with his ideas, but he will stick on his point and he can prove his point anytime. And he can recall this philosopher, that philosopher, this theologian. He will challenge theologians. He will question Saint Augustine. And very few people can do that. He was so confident of his own deep roots in philosophy and theology and Eastern mysticism that it seems he is an authority in all this. And nobody can question him. And if he asks a question, he will wait in the line. He will explain to you in very simple terms what is philosophy. And all kinds of isms. He hated isms. Say no meaning says even for secularism he had his own definition. Today in India there is a big controversial word secularism and Paulos Gregorius had his own definition. Uh, so convincing to me because I have been watching and listening him throughout. I think that analytical skills which he exhibited was so much attractive. I was also a teacher for some 17 years. I was teaching in a teacher education college, that is two-year training college. So we had no politics there. So first I started teaching philosophy. Then I moved to English because I have my masters both in English and philosophy. So I think I imbibed certain analytical skills from Paulos Gregorius Theremenus, a rare kind of phenomenon that he can delve into the roots either of philosophy or theology and explain things in a very. For example, uh, he was talking. I don't remember location where he was started talking, but he said the Bible says God created man, human beings, in his own image and likeness. I have read so much, I have listened to so much people of theology, but nobody can explain exactly in human terms. Nobody knows exactly his meaning. But Gregorius Tirimani said, look, he has his own peculiar way of shaking his head like that. And he would say, the first meaning is that there is similarity between God and human beings, created in God's own image. Like God has a body, you cannot make an image of God. Unless you make an image, how can we have likeness? But he said this is not the meaning. Don't physically. He said there is similarity between God and man. He did not stop with that. He continued to say that this also means that God is all love. When his uh, autobiography, which is still with me, he explains some of these things. That God is love. He talks so much of love in his autobiography. And God is love. God is forgiveness. God is concern for others, for everything. Is overflowing love. If you will, you can also be like that. See, it's explaining what is the meaning of image and likeness. I have never heard anybody explaining it in such simple, convincing words. How can you explain the other words? Only Paulus Gregorius Semene could do that. Nobody else in my knowledge. In the seminary too, when he engages a class, he uses very good English. Usually in our state, he would say, "I am taking English. I am taking chemistry." This is just utter nonsense. We are not taking English. We are engaging a class. Trivedi would never say such nonsense. When he engages in a class, because of his travels abroad, he's a self-made man, as you know. He knows the in and out of human suffering because he suffered so much. His experience, ups and downs in his life. So he knows nobody will teach you what is life, what is the black and white of life. He knows it everything. So when he teaches, the way he delves into the roots of what he says is amazing. As far as I know, my professor in Princeton and Gregorius Themius on have playing that.
Yes, yes. Trimeni, in one of your tributes to Mark Gregorius, you mentioned that uh, Mark Gregorius is a philosopher and also a theologian at its best in India. So, Trimeni, kindly please explain the statement.
We have theologians and we have philosophers. It's a rare breed that these two come together in one person. And that is the value of Paulus Mark. He will not stop with his study of philosophy, he'll move easily to theology and back. Easily he can, even without our knowledge, he will move to philosophy to theology. And when we explain something in theology, he's so convinced that he can draw from this religion, that religion. It's not possible easily with other people. And in explaining philosophy, not being so reverential to Plato, Dante like that, but he said this is okay, the other is not. She was an expert at that. Even in philosophy, His classes in theology were filled with philosophical concepts, and his philosophy is easily colored with theology. Theology is not something you get in your shelf, but theology on the street, very practical theology, and some humorous moments in the seminary. Even some of the students then would recall there is a talk. Gregorius was talking about mission, and Ostad Severi was sitting very near. He's irresistible, as you know. Ostad would just jump and say, he said something about mission. Gregorius said, please sit there. We'll explain it. If you want to know more, come to my room after this class. This is such conviction. He's not trying to injure anybody else. Has been taken in stride. We know that. So, as a philosopher, he's a theologian. He's not exclusive compartments. He's not a theologian, 100%, 24/7 a theology, nothing to do with science, anything. But his philosophy contains mathematics. It contains science. And this applies to his theology as well. It is compendium. His canvas is so comprehensive and big that there will be philosophy, there will be theology, there will be Indian religion, Buddhism, science, and regarding drum beating, not he, somebody else said drum beating is mathematics. Tidam, tidam, drum, drum, drum. It's mathematics. So it's such a myriad knowledge of person. Don't limit him saying that he's a genius. He's something more than that. So just seeing something and looking around and delving in it. And this is very rare kind of. He supplies brains. His brain power was extraordinary. Somebody used to say about Vatashil Tijmeni he was like the brain of 100 people just put together in his head. Uh, I cannot judge Vatashil Tijmeni anybody, but Gurus Tijmeni was like that. He was all brains, and he had very great regard for Paramala Tirumeni. And when he analyzes the personality saintliness of Paramala Tirumeni, he would say, in my words, Paramala Tirumeni was a philosopher and theologian and a saint. A saint contains all these elements. You put away everything, Paulus Gregorius Tirumeni has that saintly nature. I don't call him a saint, but he had this comprehensive understanding of human person and say, I can never understand who God is. And my inability is my ability. My lack of knowledge is my knowledge. So that for me that is spirituality. Spirituality is not something you find in a book, but spirituality in life. And Gregorius Many, in my words, poor me, he was a spiritual person. So I won't go up to the level of say calling a saint, but he was a spiritual person, sometimes moving to mysticism at times. If you read some of the books, for example, he will be depending too much on Gregory of Nyssa, as you know. And the joy of freedom is one of the best expressions of his philosophy and theology all rolled into one. And Taragans are translated into Malayalam, that is more difficult. Difficult than Gregorius Many's English. So even better than human presence is more philosophy coated with theology. But freedom, the joy of freedom is the real joy of writing and reading Paulus Gregorius. It's a small book, but I read it several times. A parallel could be Sumar Azhikode. Sumar Azhikode, I loved him. I loved his speeches. We were a kind of friends. Before his death, I visited him, etc., etc. When he analyzes things, I recall Gregorius thing. When Gregorius, when he passed away, the very next day, there was an article in maybe Malayalam Panorama written by Azhigod Mash. You know the heading, what the heading? ഇടിഞ്ഞത് ഒരു കുലപർവ്വതം. This is a rare kind of title. ഇടിഞ്ഞത് ഒരു കുലപർവ്വതം. So these are some parallels. Azhigod Mash, he was training college principal, this and that. Fundamentally, he was a writer. He knew Sanskrit, he knew music, Malayalam, some theology. If you read Tattvamasi, you can see, you can read into it some of the Orthodox theology. Later on, talking to my audience about Azhigod Mash and Tattvamasi especially, I just quoted from this is Orthodox theology. So this kind of wide lens looking is not Hindu, but uh, his vision of the universe is so vast. It's not limited to one religion, one philosophy, nothing like that. And Gregorius Semeni is that trait. At that level, I compare Gregorius Semeni with Azhigod Mash. So both are philosophers and theologians. A theologian is one who truly prays, is a theologian. A theologian is one who truly prays. Who said that? Later on we'll discuss. Okay.
Triveni, as an ecumenical leader yourself, in what perspective do you understand the role and leadership of Mark Gregorius as a renowned ecumenical leader?
I joined the ecumenical field much later than Gregorius did. But I could see and feel and hear the imprint that he made in international ecumenical fields, meetings, organizations, and sometimes he would be very angry with the ecumenical movement leaders. And I heard somewhere he's talking about this is ecumenical carpentry. He said, we're so angry. He said, this is carpentry, ecumenical carpentry. And this freedom of thinking, even ecumenical, there's one difference between Theophilos Themeni, Bombay, and Gregorius Themeni, Delhi. Theophilos Themeni will be making bridges. Gregorius Themeni is never, he would break the bridge and burn it. He won't dare mind what is happening. But the ecumenical people feared him. They were afraid of Gregorius Themeni because he will question, especially the Western idea. So what you sent me the small page from my book. Years ago at Trivandrum, maybe some 40 years ago, I heard Gregorius talking about the rise of fundamentalism in India, and he mentioned one organization. I want to mention it now because it's an open book. And he said, see, you can see in your own lifetime the rise of a fundamental organization in India that is going to be very dangerous. People were trapped, tension. And for me, I look back, it was a prediction that really happened in India. It happens even today. So that kind of looking ahead of the times and saying that India today, this happened when the Congress was ruling in India. They said, no, this will change. A fundamental organization will come up. And see, this happened 40 years ago. I was a very young priest, 25, 26 years. And what he said about the rise of raising the head, raising fundamentalism, raising his head. How can you just look into the future and say this? And that is the discerning eye of Paulus Margarius. So in even the ecumenism, he will oppose or fight with any idea which for him is not Christian. He would say all ecumenism is not Christian and question it. And even today, when he talks about that, he was called a pink bishop, as you must have heard that. He's a pink bishop. Because people would say he was just leaning towards Marxist ideas. He studied Marxism much better than the Marxists of today. Marx Analysis Society is best studied by Gregorius Trimedi. And why Govinda Pillai was so attracted to him? Because Gregorius Trimedi knew Marx better than even Govinda Pillai. And that was Gregorius Trimedi. Now, the same thing happened in ecumenical circles, not just India. His concern was universal. So he goes to the World Council of Churches or regional councils and he talks so convincingly that people will listen to him. That is why I said some people are really afraid of him. What comes next? He'll attack them left and right. And the hegemony, or you could say hegemony in Chinese or whatever it is. But his idea of socialism, socialistic society was uh, closer to Marxism. And capitalism, he was an enemy of capitalism. He studied in the US, Leeds, Princeton, etc. But he would question Western imperialism. If it is today, if we were alive today in 2026, we will really question the policies of the US president. Call him some by names, not just simple English. Because what is happening internationally now, people will start smiling, what fool is he? Gregorius Trimedi will look at your face and say, you are a fool. That is Gregorius Trimedi. So, even in ecumenical circles, his points were so made convincing and in explaining that this is Christianity. This is Orthodox Christianity or this is Eastern Christianity. And he doesn't mind who is listening to him. He's not snubbing actually, but he will. He was not afraid to do anything like that. So in ecumenism, he had so many enemies. That is why I want to tell you. He had so many enemies, and he felt it. He worked so much for world council of churches, but as the Jews led to Jesus Christ, they alienated Gregorius Trimedi. This is a fact. Many people know that, people do not know that, but he felt it very much because he was so much involved in international ecumenical experiment. He explained what is ecumenism. He said it's not just an organization; it is a life. Is a life-changing, not a threatening thing. Ecumenism. This for all human beings. Nowadays, people talk about greater ecumenism, vast ecumenism. No, no, nothing like that. Ecumenism for all. So Gregorius Trimedi has his fundamental knowledge of what is ecumenism. It is not something very, very small thing, but international thing. Whenever there is suffering, he can feel it from a distance. As I said, he had felt that kind of thing at home, everywhere. Human suffering was a great concern for Gregorius Trimedi. People do not know that. Human suffering, he felt it as his own suffering. Whether it's in Africa, and somewhere else in the East or anywhere in South America, he will feel it inside. So, as an ecumenist, he was a rare breed, I say, a rare phenomenon. So, he had made so many enemies in ecumenism. And I have heard people saying that, oh, you belong to the Church of Fathers by Gregorius, like that. Many people loved him like him. Later on, I think I saw him last speak at the Kerala University. Kerala University, he was giving a big talk, the same talk he gave in Delhi. And some Catholic Catholics came from Delhi to Trivandrum just to listen to him. He says, 20 points were made very good. See, this is happening. Peoples of other religion, other churches, we are listening to him. He was not exclusive for this, but he would explain orthodoxy to anyone. And he would question Roman Catholicism. I will talk about the bank of in Rome or Vatican. There is a bank of the Holy Spirit. He will laugh saying that they have a bank of the Holy Spirit in Vatican. That is Gregorius Trimedi. But he was a friend of the popes. He was a friend of all the heads of churches, the Russian or Byzantine churches, and Oriental church. He was the one accepted ecumenical leader throughout the world when he was alive. In all the churches, even the Dalai Lamas, even the Swamis there. I have never met anyone ecumenical leader who is revered by all the churches, whether it is Oriental or Byzantine. He was a link between the East and the West. And as you know, he was behind the common Sunday school curriculum movement for the Oriental Orthodox churches. It was his initiative which led to the formation, organization of a common Sunday school curriculum for the five Oriental, now it is 65 Oriental churches. After a few years, it collapsed. But this initiative from Gregorius Trimeni, nobody else had done it unparalleled. So he was a friend of the Byzantine churches, friend of Demon Patriarch, and he was a friend of Syrian Patriarch, but he would challenge everybody. So he was a link with all the churches, all the religions. That is ecumenism. This is not a parochial ecumenism as we look at today, but it's ecumenism universal. His ecumenism for the world. So, as in my estimate, my limited estimate, is the only one ecumenical reader I have met who is for the whole world and everybody revering. One person. Thank you.
Trimeni, you have very successfully been able to translate or transliterate Trimeni's work, The Human Presence, into Malayalam language, and which was also very appreciated by many of the readers. So, Trimeni, please share your experience during that process.
As I recall, I did it a few years ago. It was not transliteration, but translation from English to Malayalam. Maybe because I have a master's in English and PhD, etc., and also master's in Malayalam. So maybe the reason they entrusted it to me, and I don't remember the details now, but one thing I can say the human presence is an original presentation. It is rooted more in philosophy and in theology. This is not these ideas are not borrowed from anyone, but is his own analysis of the human presence. And the idea maybe he got it mainly from Gregory of Nyssa, that the human person has an elevated position in the created universe. And he's not a slave. The human person is respected even by God. It's such an elevated position for human beings. So it's a dignified. We talk about the dignity of human beings, but the dignity of human creation is celebrated by Gregorius Trimeni as being that the human presence. I could find philosophical ideas coming up and very solid theological ideas also coming and getting mixed. So that is a good. I don't remember the details now at the moment, but I did it. Happily did it. All the chapters. Okay.
Tirumeni along with Gregorius Tirumeni and other meetings of the church. So, what was his presence like? What changed, or how was that experience?
Uh, I started attending the Holy Synod in 1994 because just after my ordination I left for Princeton. So after coming back, I joined the Holy Synod. At that time, Macarius Themeni was there, Gregorius Themeni was, Philippos Theophilus Themeni was also there. So it was very elite kind of synod meeting at that time. Gregorius Themeni was the secretary. He was a very, what should I say, very intelligent secretary. You cannot fool him any time. He was a very intelligent kind of synod secretary. And there were controversies at times, especially the American problems. And Tilmeni will listen to them. Finally, he said, no, this is the idea. Otherwise, I'm just going out. I don't want to be a secretary. So he was so impatient with ideas which were not working or which he thought is wrong. When he reaches an idea which is baseless or which thinks is wrong, he will tell it openly. I cannot agree with that. If you insist, there is the end of the story. I will finish with my secretaryship. It doesn't mind threatening, but people knew that this man is an indispensable person in the Holy Synod. Everybody is convinced. And Vadakuneva was one who knew who Glorious Themani was. And Glorious had great respect for him. I know that. For Theophilus Themani, a kind of a guru for Glorious Themani, Isabel was a friend. So at that time, these great people we were small people, village in the Synod. But when, for example, when I stand up and say something, they all ears, very rapt attention. So they are giving respect and taking respect and not looking down, oh, you are a young person. Or no, nothing like that. I still remember it. When I rise to say something, there's a lot of attention. And that is an encouragement for me. So when I look back, it's a treasure. The legacy of Gregorius Thermani in the Holy Synod and the legacy of Theophilus Thermani. That is a real treasure. There is the golden era of the Holy Synod. വസന്തകാലം സിനഡിന്റെ വസന്തകാലമായിരുന്നു never never again it was repeated. Okay, I cannot go into the details.
Sirveni, to conclude, please share. I know there are many qualities of Grigoris Sirveni to share, but kindly share any three qualities that can help the young generation, the present generation, to have a better perspective of life.
Number one, he was a man of prayer. I know that. He was a man who would pray to God with tears, whether in India or outside. He continued to pray and pray, especially in the night. People doubt how can this busy man think I find time to pray, but he did. There's one fundamental quality to be emulated by anyone even today. Number two, he was a teacher and student at the same time till his death. As you say, the ideal teacher and the ideal student are one and the same person. There is no adage. And I see it in Gregorius Thelman. Who's continue to learn, read, learn, assimilate, analyze. This tendency to learn and learn more is never satisfied with learning. And this trait of continuous learning and never say, I just say no. This is another trait we can. And his peculiar trait to accept what is good for others and to resist what is wrong. You will just say, you are right, always right. No, you will never say that. If you are right, it is so pleasant to accept it. If you are wrong, you will say to your face, you are wrong. This is so fearless a person. But somebody, Isa or somebody said, if you are a normal person, you will never be a writer. To be a writer, you need to be abnormal and quarrelsome. And he had these traits. He was a writer as well, and his translation of the Taksha is excellent. We have so many Kadavi Polda translations today. Some translations in Kerala, but the best translation I have seen in terms of language and being true to the original, you go to Gregorius Semeni. So he just translated one or two. That is one thing I revere in him. He was scientist, philosopher, but he was so much interested in teaching. If you bother him, if idea come to the seminary, I think it is from Gregorius. The theology theology for the laity, theological formation of the laity. That is an idea which he loved very much. So he was, at the same time, he was a teacher. He loved small children. He will turn. He will also be a child then. He smile with them, and he was a very rash kind of person when somebody does something wrong. And when he teaches, he's not just keeping some notes there and repeating and ask you to take down your phone, nothing like that. He will talk from his brain and heart. This one person who can at the same time talk, take his brain and his heart. It's very rare. Not that he is emotional, but he can take out his brains and memories. Memory is very sharp. His memory was very, very sharp. Take it from me. And he was so felt. When he says something, it's a felt statement. You cannot easily dissect the statement that comes from the Holy Spirit. So for me, this prayerful person, he would never let the other person know that he's a man of prayer. And indefatigable his courage and his willingness to learn again. And I heard that when he was a priest, not a priest, he was a layman. He was in the Alway Fellowship House. He was leading some classes there. Thoman was there. And Kurchi Baba was there. Somebody told him, there's someone who has come from the West. He's holding some classes. Call him. And Philip was such a foolish about it. So be very careful. Baba was everything. So a mat was put there and he was asked to sit there. Old Baba was sitting there. He asked him about 100 questions. This I had from Paulus Gregorius. He asked me 100 questions and 98 he gave the correct answer. And he was also asked, who ordained Paul? See, he gave this answer. I was like, no, you are wrong. When Irenaios put his hand on his head, that is ordination. And I heard Rivers saying, it's amazing how can this man who never attended a college, a theological institution, his teaching is wonderful. He said that is God given knowledge. It is inspired knowledge, not from books. So he believed in both learning from books, learning from inspiration from anywhere, and learning from gurus, and learning even from Indian sannyasis. And he had some sannyasi friends while in Delhi. Chidananda, Swami Chidananda was his best friend. Dalai Lama was his friend. So he would discern the spiritual in any religion, not just in Christianity. The spiritual in Buddhism, the spiritual in Hinduism, or Jainism, or Islam. That is why I said he's a very rare kind of genius. You cannot just say he was a genius and full stop. He was something much, much more than a genius. Okay. If you have any more questions,
No, thank you so much, Tirumeni, for your valuable time.
I don't know
And
whether I talk for long.
no,
Look
no,
at
no.
look at
Tirumeni,
editing
thank you
people.
so much. Yeah, for your wisdom, and we received a lot of insights from this short interview. And we pray that continue to pray that Grigorius Tirumeni continue to inspire all of us and also the coming generations. Thank
And
you so much,
thank you
Tirumeni.
for what you are doing now.
Thank you.
You are just bringing Gregorius again to us. And it's a wonderful thing. God bless you, Achan.